Hi, I'm Dr. Lisa Gilbert. I am recently retired. I'm a psychiatrist, spent 15 years at the VA here in Western Massachusetts. I have also worked on a couple of different trauma disorder units, inpatient, as well as working in community mental health. And so I've worked with many different kinds of trauma survivors, including veterans and people with childhood trauma, as well as being a survivor myself. I recently published a book called Soul Can You, but this video is not about that. This video is about giving you information that is very pragmatic and useful and not in any book or journal. So listen, and you may find you get some information that's very useful for you today. The idea of trauma triggers. People banter the word trigger around a lot. It's simply something, an event or a stimulus that spurs trauma memories or flashbacks or emotional responses. Trauma triggers are very common, and they are also very sometimes hidden or unrecognized. And so I've like to designate them as either concrete triggers or abstract or possibly situational triggers. So a concrete trigger would be something like, a guy walking down the street, he looks like your Uncle Nick, and your Uncle Nick used to hit you with a baseball bat. This guy's carrying a bat. A bat is a bat. That's a concrete trigger. For Vietnam veterans, a helicopter is a helicopter, or diesel smell is diesel smell. Or for the Iraqi veterans, it's, the caustic smoke smells like the burning pits. Those are very concrete and understandable triggers. No one doubts where the reaction is coming from. The ones that I really want to spend time talking about are the abstract ones. These are the ones that sneak up on you that you don't even know you've been triggered. So let me explain this like the TV show $100,000 Pyramid. It's a categorical things. And the category for the abstract triggers is things that make you feel trapped or vulnerable. Um, so an example I can give you would be a little story I'm going to tell you. You're on your way to come see me at my office. It's your appointment's at 2 o'clock and it's 1:30 in the afternoon. You've got plenty of time, and your spouse has said to you, please stop at the grocery store and don't come home without the, and whatever it is, fill in the blank. Very important. She needs it tonight. So you think, hey, I've got time. I'll go run into the grocery store. I'll go pick the thing up, dash out, and make it to my appointment, and no problem. So you go in the grocery store, you find the item, no problem. You get to the front, and all the registers are closed, including the self checkouts, except one. And there's already three people in line. Oh, geez, looking at your watch, you jump in line. And then somebody, of course, pulls up behind you with a full basket behind you. Now you're surrounded, the gum, the candy, people. And the lady at the front is saying, I think that's the wrong price. Would you please get a price check on that? And suddenly, like that, you're homicidal. You want to like kill that woman. And you're like thinking you must be crazy because this is just a lady that needs a price check. Why am I, wanting to hurt her? And that emotion, it can either come out as, a homicidal thought, it can come out as tears, it can come out as a panic attack. You could start screaming, where's the goddamn manager? Open up these cash registers. I mean, just going inappropriate in the volume and magnitude of the emotion for the situation. The question is why? Well, in that moment of needing to rush to get to the appointment on time and getting blocked, you're trapped just for that moment. And the emotional system doesn't stop and think this is grocery store, this is this situation. That's cognitive. This is not what we're talking about. It's emotional. And what happens is that trap, it's an on or off switch, and it what it does is it sort of travels, it time travels to the past, to the situation where you had the biggest, worst trap of your life, which is usually the trauma situation. And it connects those two things just unconsciously under the surface. And at the time of that initial trauma, many of the emotions couldn't be expressed at that time. I mean, you're trapped by enemy fire being shot over you. You're trapped in a car that's all crunched up in an accident. You're trapped by someone assaulting you and who's grabbed you. Trapped, those are traps. And in that moment, you can't stand up when somebody's shooting at you and say, God, quit, I'm angry, stop shooting at me. You get killed. So what happens is you suppress those emotions. It goes into your body and into your emotions. It stays under the surface until it pops up in the grocery store in a completely inappropriate magnitude, because it's the magnitude of the original trauma that's been sitting there festering and waiting to explode. And now it explodes because you are trapped. I'm going to give another example of a trap. This is a really common one. So you're home, you want to relax, and your wife comes in, or your spouse comes in, and starts chewing you, starts yelling at you, saying, "I'm so sick of you leaving your shoes and leaving the toothpaste open and leaving things in the sink, and why don't you ever pick up?" And she's just going, "Nah, nah, 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 nah," like, Charlie Brown's teacher. Rah, 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 rah. And you're thinking, "I can't take this. I can't take being insulted. I'm just gonna explode if she keeps this up." So you say, "I'm just going to tiptoe out the door." And you start to move towards the door, and she says, "And if you can't hear what I have to say for once, that's it. I'm getting a divorce." And boom, you throw the TV set. Why? Because if you stay, you're going to be berated and emotionally beaten up. And if you leave, you might lose your wife and your family. Damned if you do, and damned if you don't. So it's a trap. It's an emotional trap, not an easily recognizable one. So people don't understand these traps. Like, they don't understand that the grocery store has anything to do with combat or anything to do with a car accident, because they don't seem like they're related, but they are emotionally, because of $100,000 pyramid. The category is things that make you feel vulnerable or trapped. And they could be real simple things like getting a tax bill that you weren't expecting. You don't have the money for it, and suddenly you're trapped financially. Boom, explode. You throw things on throw the table. People think, oh, everybody with PTSD has bad temper problems. And it's not they have temper problems, it's that they're constantly being triggered. And if you could understand what the triggers are and figure out what to do about them, the anger and rage comes down. Let's talk about another common trap: driving. This is road rage, right? You're driving down a road with the double yellow line, and you're in a hurry. Maybe you have to go to the bathroom. You're trying to get home, and somebody's driving really slow under the speed limit. And you're like tailgating. You're like, "Get out of my way." And you can't go. You can't go this way because it's illegal. And you can't go that way, and it's illegal. You like this, and then explosion. Again, it's the feeling of being trapped. It's igniting from earlier times. So let's talk about the antidote for the trap, so that once you begin to separate yourself from the emotion, and do use your cognitive skills. So one of the things that I like to say is, if you can catch yourself and notice that your emotions are too big for whatever the scenario is, if you're a trauma survivor, just tell yourself it's your trauma. Just start with that. It may not be, but let's just say it is. You're just going to tell yourself, this is just my trauma. This is just my PTSD. And I'm not saying just because I'm minimizing what PTSD is. I'm saying that you say just to yourself, because that begins to minimize it. That begins to push its power and influence down. And you separate yourself by labeling it as, it's just my PTSD. It's not me, who I am. It's my PTSD. So now you've got a little squeak room there. The next thing that you need to practice doing is figuring out choices. If you can come up with a list of choices, you're not trapped. So in the grocery store, you could put the item down and come back later, set it next to the bubble gum and leave. You could call my office and say, "I'm going to be a few minutes late." And you say, "Oh, I would never do that. I'm always on time. I would never call you and do that. It's disrespectful." Doesn't matter if you would never do it. It's still a choice. So you put it on a list, even if it's a bad choice. Even if it was illegal to put the item next to the gum, you'd put that on the list anyway, even if it's illegal, because why? So that you have a list. And once you have a list, you are now a customer in a grocery store who's annoyed and has a lousy list of choices, versus someone who is, a raging bull with their PTSD flagrantly flying. So you're better to be an annoyed customer than the flagrant emotion coming out. So again, trauma, there are concrete triggers. Those ones are easy and easily recognizable. It's these abstract ones that come and hit people all the time, and they don't recognize that they are trauma traps, because they don't seem to be related to whatever the thing was the trauma. And it is also the reason why people sometimes get mislabeled bipolar. When they go in and tell somebody, I have crying spells in the grocery store, or they just come on out of nowhere. Well, in reality, they aren't coming out of nowhere. They're coming out of some kind of a vulnerability situation that is a trigger, and they're just not recognizing the trigger. Once the PTSD gets settled down, especially when you get better at recognizing what the trauma triggers are and what's happening to you, suddenly those mood swings aren't there anymore. So can't be bipolar. It's also why going to therapy is really helpful, because in order to manage this, you gotta get some ability to be aware of yourself, and deep relaxation and anxiety calming symptom management kinds of skills that you can learn either in group therapy or individual therapy is really, really tantamount to giving you the hammer and nails you need to build your house. You need those skills in order to implement what I'm talking about. But what I'm talking about is something that hasn't been recognized very well, which is the the nature of trauma triggers. So for today, that's all I'm going to share with you. Just this short little video on trauma triggers, and hopefully you will. Oh, I forgot. I got to go back to the spousal one. I know I was forgetting something. You're having that fight with your spouse. Instead of a list of choices, this one's a little bit different. It really behooves you to sit down with that special person and explain to them that when your PTSD is ignited, when it's going, you can't actually think. You can't remember things. You can't problem solve. So whatever it is she's trying to tell you, you're not going to comprehend it anyways. She might as well not waste her breath, not waste her time. It's important that you begin to recognize your body starting to get yanked, that you're getting into that PTSD, so that you can give a signal. You guys should have an agreed upon, timeout signal, something. If you do this, it's imperative that you always come back. So what I would suggest is you take a timeout. She's still mad. You go take care of yourself. Go for a walk. Do what you have to do to ground yourself, get yourself solidly back in ordinary state. Have to come back and sit down and hear what she has to say. If you skip that last part because you don't really want to hear it, you're going to cause a major problem in your relationship, because if you don't come back, what you're doing is controlling your significant other with your PTSD. You're saying, I'm going to go away and I'm never going to let you tell me things that are distressing to you. And that's not the foundation of a good relationship. So if you do the timeout thing where you're acknowledging, because your spouse may not recognize that you're having the internal, kicking up, and you step away, you have to come back. And she has to agree, or he has to agree, that when they see you giving the signal, they just need to stop. They really literally have to give you a space enough to get your symptoms under control. I mean, if somebody's having a migraine headache and they're going like this, you're not going to try to talk to them and explain things to them. So the same is true with PTSD. You wouldn't try to explain things to people who are yanked up with the PTSD. Problem is if you're staying yanked up all the time and never grounding, there's no space to come in and have those conversations. So that's where therapy comes in, is learning to ground and get the space of neutralization, so that you don't have to stay, elevated in some kind of super ready, hyper vigilant state. Now, just also throw this one more thing in, is that everybody has a radar. I go like this is your radar, scanning your environment, watching for things. When you have PTSD, that radar is this big, and it's constant, and it's very sensitive, and it will pick things up. It's learning to get that radar down to size so that you're not overly reading the environment. Anyway, so this is just a little information on trauma triggers. I hope that it is helpful to you. Please like the video. Also visit my website for other information. It's www.soulcanu.com. And we'd love to have you visit the site. Thanks a lot.